Good evening, good evening. What's going on with my camera? It's like it's not auto-focusing or some shit. Whatever. What's going on, gentlemen? Got a nice informative show for you tonight about how to make a woman submissive. It's sort of a joke. Sort of a joke title, but whatever. It is a joke, but it's not. I'll just say that. If during the show, of course, if you have any questions, ask your questions. And let me just put this in here. Actually, you know what? I'll keep that. I was going to change the ticker, to book your calls. But yes, if you want to book a free consultation, in the description of every video lately on the lives, go to the new ones, and there's a link to my Calendly, and you can book a call with me. We'll talk about anything you need to talk about with your personal development, your relationship, marriage, power dynamics, BDSM, you have it, or what have you. So yeah, welcome to the show. We're gonna be talking about how to make a woman submissive, because I do have situations where guys come to me and they're plagued with the modern woman. The modern woman. And the thing is that, when you're dealing with women on their surface, okay, I'll say this: when you're dealing with women on their surface, they always seem to be different. Like they'll change, they seem to change throughout the years or something like that. People say, "Oh, women are different." Women are different now. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with the focus. I have autofocus on, but whatever. Okay. They'll say women are different now. They don't make them the way grandma was made. But the thing is that at the core of women, they are the same. The core of women is the same. And maybe in your interactions with them, you'll catch a glimpse. And that core, if I could personify it, it's like a little girl. It's this little girl who just wants to feel safe. That's what it's at the core. But it's I guess it's deeper than that. Maybe it's more spiritual than that, if you want to look at it that way, because there's a profound sense of vulnerability and openness, fearlessness, or even like a lack of to be afraid of something, if that makes sense. It's a very like open identity. I wouldn't necessarily say blank identity, but it's an open identity. And I guess that's part of or probably related to the whole like little girl thing, but it's just this genuine, like innocent essence that needs containment, that desires containment, because it doesn't produce that of its own. Not from the core, right? And then once that time goes on and whatever, grow up, world, other people, this event, that situation, this person, that person, they learn to contain themselves, but it's not sufficient enough, right? It is sufficient to like get through life, but it doesn't, the containment that they create for themselves does not tap into their core. It actually separates them from their core. When they allow themselves to settle into the containment of a man, and I'm not saying males, I'm saying a man, all right? Because we make that distinction here. That's when that container makes a connection to her core. And there's a huge difference between containers. All right. But So I just wanted to lay that out there just for the pure understanding of it. So I have guys who are married, I have guys who have long-term girlfriends and so on, and they come to me, they've got like a very, regular sort of thing where there's like all these like ups and downs, and they're like, "Oh gosh, my relationship's like this, my relationship's like that. It's good, it's bad, it's up, down, left, right, whatever." And they're like, "I want to create some kind of dynamic where things are a little bit more stable, where things are a little bit more streamlined, and there's an understanding of who I am, who she is, our roles, what's to be expected of our respective roles." Uh, they want this, but this sort of setup is a lot of times counteractive or counterintuitive, not intuitive, but like counteractive to the conditioning of each person. So a lot of times the guy has difficulty with giving commands, for example. Like I had this guy who he's a client right now, fairly new guy, and he was giving instructions to his girlfriend basically on just how to ask a question, because she wanted to take a little day trip somewhere, and it was a nice day, like that sort of thing. And the way she was going about it, asking, wasn't clear, and it wasn't to his liking. Like he wanted her to just come out and ask, right, very directly. And he tried to instruct her on how to do this, and he wrote this whole like this explanation. And first he said like the reason why I'm doing this, and then he like led up to telling her how he wanted her to ask the question, or how to pose the question properly. And he made a statement. He's like, say it like this. And the way he stated it, it wasn't a question. He made it a statement. Like, I would like it so much if we could do this. That's not a question. That's not a request. A request is, can we please go do X on this day? That's a question. That's how a request is formed. And so having that shift, that's foreign to him. And it's foreign to the woman as well, due to their own conditioning, because they're used to making their own decisions. They're not used to saying, hold on a second, let me clear it with this guy first, right? And that's when it becomes challenging for them, because I mean, everybody involved, it's challenging because you're going against years and years and years of conditioning. And it's not easy. Like, you think it's easy, but it's not. Like, really, I'm telling him, just tell her to ask simple questions. That's it. And he had difficulty with that. But not in the sense that was like emotional difficulty. He didn't even realize that he was following just a pattern. That's how he's always done things, to smooth things through so that they don't go like contested, right? Because his subconscious was afraid that if he said it a certain way, it will result in pushback from her. And this is one of the things that guys really have to get their head wrapped around, is not being afraid of pushback on how you want things. Like, you're entitled to want things the way you want them, right? I mean, it's your relationship, is it not? So let me open this document. Training a woman to be submissive. It's a funny title, right? I'm laughing. It's like it's a part joke, because submission is not a doing. That's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. Even women, right? Submission is a state of being, and that's not something you can actually train for, right? Because I've had girls who, they considered themselves my submissive, but they're not. They weren't actually my submissive, because they were only acting. Well, they were only acting, basically. They were just They were just doing the things. And I think that a lot of guys, since they don't have a, a lot of women behaving this way towards them, right? Like just readily doing the actions of submission, right? The words, the getting on the knees, the doing this, the doing that, the sexual stuff, the non-sexual stuff, just willingly doing the things. And they're like, wow, that's submission. But I have to tell these guys it may or may not be, because submission is not determined by actions, right? Because like, what if she got into a car accident and she was paralyzed from like the chest down? Is she no longer submissive? Right? No, because if she truly is, it's a state of being. It's something, it's a state in her mind and a state in her heart, regardless of whether her body can or can't do something. And that's the hard thing to achieve, both on the person who's doing it and the person who's guiding toward it. Because think about it, like how do you guide a state of being? That it's kind of a wacky concept to wrap your head around. It certainly can be done, and you can't necessarily bring someone there. Okay, you can sort of carve a path and show them a way and provide tools. Much in the same way that I mentor people. I can't do the transformation for them. I can provide tools, I can provide pathways, I can provide explanations, I can lead them to certain breakthroughs and understandings through questioning and leading their mind in certain ways. But they'll come to the edge of that river, and it's up to them to take that step to cross over it. Like I can't push them to the other side. And even if I could, it wouldn't be genuine, because that's me choosing and not them choosing. So really, if you have a woman who's doing these submissive things, you should tell them, hold on a second. It's great that you're so willing and you're wanting to do these things. That's great. But I need you to understand that I don't want you to do anything that you don't absolutely want to do. Because I don't want you to do these things begrudgingly, or because you think that I want them to happen, or because I like them. That's great that you want to make me happy, but I need you to be in a state that is full of joy, like a feeling of joy to serve, not because you think it's expected of you, because that's what your role calls you to do. That because there's a chance of being disingenuous, and we don't want that. We want genuine, wholehearted attitude of service, like that comes from the heart. And if it's not there, I don't want it. Like I don't want fake servitude. I don't want fake submission. I don't want fake surrendership. Okay? Because that's more or less obedience, right? Obedience is just doing the things that you're told to do. And some guys, they could care less. They're just like, you know what? As long as the things are done that I want done, I'm good. I don't care about your state of being. And frankly, you don't have to. You really don't have to. But if you're interested, if you're curious about going deeper into these things and experiencing and understanding what submission looks like, I mean, because you can't experience it yourself, I mean, unless you are a switch or you're a sub yourself, but it's a profound experience. It really is, because you can't even wrap your head around it when you see someone expressing themselves in a way so consistently from their heart, and you're like, oh shit, they really mean this. Like they're really giving their will so much trust. It's a bizarre experience when you first see it. Thank you for the question, Hotep Bond. Is submission not demanded or earned, as just is? Well, it certainly shouldn't be demanded. I mean, that's just silly. It can be earned, right? So you hear like a lot of women say, oh, the dom or the guy, he has to earn my submission. And I know what she means, okay, but earning is the wrong word. Basically, what she's saying is you got to be the guy who has his center together, where he's grounded within himself. He doesn't need other things to ground him, his identity and his strength of character. um, I can feel him in that way. That's him earning it. Okay, it's not him like doing stuff for her to prove that he's good enough for her submission. Like that's what earning something means. Okay, like you earn your badges in the Boy Scouts. Like you do all this stuff, and you're like, "Hey, am I good enough?" And the badge den leader is like, "Yes, you're good enough. Here, have your badge." Right? Like it's not like that. Okay, but I understand what the woman means when they say you have to earn my submission. Basically, saying you need to be the guy that allows me to feel comfortable enough to let go of my will, to let go of my identity and put my trust into you, right? So no, it should never be earned though, because then you're just following behind the woman, right? And that's not domination. As far as it being just is, when you're in it, this is kind of going deeper into the subject, but like when you're in it, it just is. Just as domination, when you're in it, it just is. And that goes deeper into the concepts of states of being, right? The closest I could really relate it to is like the way the Buddhists talk about enlightenment. Like it's not something you do, it's something you work towards. But then when you arrive there, it's just something that is. And there's really nothing magical about it, because you're like, oh, this is me as I always have and always will be. I'm just seeing it now clearly for the first time. And you're like, oh, like, and then you just say, I am. It's a weird thing. And so when you go into that, like just is part, things get really thin, really wide, really blown out, and it loses any sort of definition to really talk about, because it becomes conceptless. It's too far out. If I could bring it back down to earth, some girls just naturally have a submissive nature, or they're comfortable being that way, or their upbringing allowed them to nurture and foster that behavior, and that's fantastic. I've noticed this with some South American cultures. I've noticed this with Eastern European cultures, and I've noticed this with Asian cultures. Like with an Asian, I mean, not just East Asian, but like India, Middle East, and then the Far East, and like the Southeast Asia. The culture fosters this. Now, if there's negatives to it in the things that they do in their culture, but regardless, the culture fosters this like submissive baseline, okay, which is pretty cool, because like if you know what you're doing, you can kind of take that and really build off of it very easily, if you know what you're doing. All right, but thank you for the question. It was very good. So let's pull up this document here and get into this stuff. Okay, so let me just take a sip of my water here. Guiding a woman to be submissive. So when guiding a woman who is not naturally submissive, or naturally submissive into the path of submission, it is essential to create a space that allows for the deep unraveling of her layers. And we've talked about the layers, like the layers of armor, where each step taken is an unveiling of her true self. And the journey begins with an understanding of her inherent resistance, which is not to be combated, but gently redirected. Okay, because once you start doing things and behaving in a certain way that exposes the fact that she has layers, there's going to be sort of like a knee-jerk reaction, a response to grab a hold of those layers, right? And excuse me, I just burped into the mic. But yeah, there's going to be this immediate reaction to kind of pull back and hold on to those layers, and that's okay, right? Because that's the first stage of recognizing that they're there in the first place. Before then, the woman's just like, oh, this is just how I am. I'm just a defensive person. And this is where patience becomes sacred. For submission is not an act of servitude, but a sacred surrender of the will. And it's a delicate dance of power and vulnerability. You must speak to the core of her being, not just the mind or the body, but the spirit. Establish a foundation built on trust and respect, for without this, no real progress can be made. Slowly, allow her to experience the beauty of yielding, of choosing to give, to follow, and to be guided, not as a loss, but as a gain. So this is one of the things that I encounter quite a bit with couples, is that when the girl hears submission, and I try not to bring that word in until she has a greater understanding of the feeling first. Okay, then she gets like the contextual understanding later. Because when they hear submission, or when they hear yielding and all that stuff, they feel like they're losing something. Okay, something's being taken from them, like their freedom or their free will or all that stuff, and that's not what it is. Okay, what's really happening is an offering, and that's what they don't get. They think that, and so it's this misunderstanding that a submission is a taking away, it's a restriction. And what a submission is, just like the word submit, like when you submit your application for a job, right? It's an offering. So to submit means to offer. That's what they need to come to understand. It's not a taking away, it's a giving. The process of training involves consistent reinforcement of boundaries, expectations, and the things that you like, right? With a keen awareness of her responses and growth. It is about knowing when to challenge her and when to soften. Pushing only to the limits where she is capable of transcending her resistance. The beauty of submission lies not in obedience for the sake of obedience, but in the profound freedom it brings when she sheds the weight of defiance, letting go of the need to control. And defiance and the need to control is all based around years of fear and coping, right? Coping with difficult situations, coping with anxiety situations, coping with the anxiety of her own mind, of her parents, of her upbringing, of this bad situation, that bad relationship, whatever. Okay, trauma, like all of these things, they culminate into these layers of protection, which bring about control so that one can feel safe on their own. Going back to what I was saying in the beginning, that a woman creating her own container is sufficient, but it's not the best, right? The best can only come from a man, right? It does well enough to get through life just fine, okay? And frankly, we all have this. Like, we all do things to kind of cope with what's we've experienced in life, and we make adjustments. We do shifting. We grow. We certainly create armors, and it's just part of what we do to protect our mind and protect our hearts. And that's okay. But when it comes into closeness, when it comes into really profoundly and deeply connecting with another person, you can't have these things. Those armors become useless, and not only useless, but counterproductive, right? Like, two people wearing armor, they can hug, but are they actually touching? No, there's like 6 inches of steel in between the two of them. Okay. Like, sure, you're doing the act of hugging, but like, are you really hugging? Not really. So as you guide her, you will also find that the key to submission is not stripping away her strength, but in harmonizing it with the flow of your leadership, like the river's current guiding the boat, not by force, but by subtle, ever-present power. And there's a big difference between power and force. Okay, power is more stable. All right, it radiates. Okay, force is active. All right, and there are times to use force. Okay, but more often you're going to be using power. All right, use force very sparingly. Okay, because it is so abrupt. It can be very abrasive. It can be shocking. All right. And it could be just in the raising the tone of your voice. Okay. It could be raising your hand. Um, it could be a whole host of things that are just like fast, abrupt, and they create like pattern interrupts. Okay. But power is the thing that permeates through everything. Okay. This is like, when you look at like great leaders from the past who really had power of influence. And there's people hundreds of miles away who follow this person's lead. They do as he commands, upholds his rules and his expectations, upholds his lands, and they've never in their life even met him. Right? This is like when you go back, like think about like empires. Like just imagine the power of someone's influence who lives in one part of the world, and their empire has extended for hundreds and hundreds of miles beyond their physical reach. Yet the people on the very edges of them, they behave almost as if they're standing right next to him. Like that's power. Okay. And this is the kind of influence that you can have in your relationships, when you learn to cultivate that power, because they behave as though you're standing right next to them. Well, they're standing next to you. So when guiding a woman who's not naturally submissive, the path must be carved deliberately. Each step aligns with her psyche, her temperament, and her resistance. The key is not to break her, but to awaken her deeper longing for structure, for yielding, for peace and surrender. So the steps I'm about to mention are not mere techniques, but they're thresholds to be crossed. Okay. So it's working with what's there first. Okay. Because you first have to observe, how she is, how her mind is, how her heart is, like where she's at. You need to get sort of like a silent audit of, what's going on with her. Okay. And that's when you can kind of get a lay of the land, and that will give you an understanding of how to proceed. Okay. And this is getting to understand her upbringing. This is getting to understand where she's been in life, her current emotional states, how those emotional states react or relate to her past states, her past events and situations, and, perhaps traumas or just injuries. Because not all bad things that happen in our past are traumatic. Okay. They're just bad things that happen. Learning how the patterns in which how she reacts to certain things, reacts to certain stimuli. And this will give you a better understanding of the lay of the land. And then so you get an idea of like, okay, her pathway goes like this, and I kind of want her pathway to go like this. Okay. So as you're working with the curves, you're slowly carving them just a little straighter and a little straighter and a little straighter as time goes on. Okay. So in doing this, there's no like get rich quick scheme. It doesn't happen. Just like any other path, the path of manhood, shout out to Steve. He's like, you can't become a brain surgeon overnight. There's no cheat code. There's no one video that'll just make it click. Okay. There's no aha moment. It's a slow bleeding process. Like the Buddhists talk about becoming immersed into Buddhism. I was told it's like walking through a fog-filled forest. When you first start walking, your clothes are dry. And then after a couple of miles, you look down and your shirt is damp. And you didn't even notice that it had been absorbing all that moisture. But at one point it was dry, and then at another point it's soaked. So, but you didn't notice the transition, and that's how it goes. So this requires your will, your ability to pay attention, and your awareness, looking at her responses, having an idea of leadership and how you want things to grow, and not taking her resistance personally, not taking offense to any of the things that she says. Okay. And understanding a wider and deeper understanding of the architecture of what's really happening. Right. Like, and you guys would say, oh man, I just want to, like, that sounds like a lot of hard work. Okay. It's not necessarily hard work, but you can't be mentally lazy. Like, you have to pay attention. You have to stay on your feet. Okay. And yeah, like, and frankly, just a lot of guys are lazy. They just want the submission already. And it's like, yeah, I get it. I understand the desire, but no one is just handed gold on a platter. It just doesn't work that way. That's not how life is. But girls should just be that way already, just packaged and clean and blank and ready to go. All right. Well, this is reality, kids. No one is raised with a perfect upbringing. Nobody. You're going to have to untangle some knots. That's just how it goes. And if you're impatient, if you're uneducated, if you're ignorant, if you're mindless, it's going to be a really frustrating thing for you. And you're just going to you're going to feel like you're going to feel like the have-nots. And you're going to be really frustrated, and you're going to be like, fuck. And then you say, you know what? Well, fuck this shit. Fuck women. They're too complicated. Oh, well, they might be too complicated for you, because they do not come gift wrapped with your name written on them. This is not how it works. That's not how it works. But there are some things that you can learn that can help you along. But just know that it's not always rough, okay? Because imagine having like a large stone, like boulder, okay, round boulder. It will roll. Like, by physics alone, round things roll, but it's heavy. So you're gonna have to figure out how to get it rolling along a path. You might need like a long board and a fulcrum to kind of lift and like get that thing going. Maybe push it really hard, figure something out. Maybe dig out the ground a little bit on its opposite side so it has like a chance to fall down and get rolling. But the fact of the matter is that your the initial energy is going to be a little bit more to get things rolling. And that's the case with yourself, with your own mental fortitude. That's the case with your heart. That's the case with your physical fitness. That's the case with you building your business. That's the case with starting a new job. That's the case with trying to advance your job. That's just the case. That's nature. Is that the first parts of it are always going to require the most effort. But then once a little bit of momentum goes, then you can just push a little bit less and a little bit less. And then after a while, that boulder is rolling fairly good on its own. And you just have to give it a flick every once in a while, just to make sure it's going in the right direction. Or if you want to change direction, you can kind of nudge it on the one side and then it veers to the left. Okay? That's really what you want to get to. But you're never going to be a place where it's completely hands off. You can kick your feet up and the boulder just goes where you want it to go by will alone, just by mind power. Like we're not Professor X. Okay, that would be nice, but it's not a reality. So let me just check on you guys. Are you all right? Because I'm dealing with a woman that is a misandrist. Why would you do that? You're dealing with a woman that hates men. Okay, good start. Very defensive, anxious, and when she sways from a path, I'm able to bring her back to center by reminding her I am not your enemy. Yeah, and that's something that you can do, but just understand, like, you choose your own battles. You know what I'm saying? Like, do you have to choose this girl? Like, unless you're married to her, you don't have to choose this girl. You can choose girls who are less defensive. You can choose girls who hate men less or not at all, okay, who love men. You can choose girls who are less defensive, less anxious, that sway less, okay, that trust you a little bit more. So you're not trapped in this situation, although you might be addicted, or this might be your only option. So what I would do is not put too much energy in, right? Because again, you don't want someone doing something that they don't want to do, okay? You want it to be free will that they come to you. And I would also explore other options at the same time. Talk to other girls, like a number of them. Okay. And I guarantee if you come across someone who doesn't hate men, who is more compliant, more open minded, less defensive, you're going to quickly forget about this girl. Quickly. So my guess is you just don't have any options. So create some. Put some effort in and create more options. All right, so let's go into this. All right, a number of steps here, like 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, 8 steps. So, number 1, establish sovereignty. She must feel your presence as undeniably steady. Before she can trust your hand, she must sense that it does not tremble. All right, so no second guessing yourself. No going back on your word. No, you must have follow through. So don't do the things that you say you're gonna fucking do. Okay. 1 second. So yeah. So part of this is trust, and trust has a large compartment for consistency. So you have to be consistent. You have to be steady. You have to be almost predictable in your general state of being, right? Which is undeniably steady. So how to further establish this is do not negotiate your authority. Make decisions with calm finality. And this kind of goes back to the client that I was telling you about, where he was sort of paving the way towards his instructions for his girlfriend on how to ask questions properly so they're clear and concise. And in his efforts, he himself was not clear and concise. And so in that, he was not expressing it with calm finality, right? And what this says when you're not like this, it says, I don't know what I want. I don't know how to express myself, and I doubt myself. I don't have trust in my own decisions. How is she going to trust you if you look like you don't trust you? If you sound like you don't trust you? And there's little tonal shifts. There's, the words you use and how you use them, they tell her in these subtle ways that you don't believe yourself, that you're trying something out. You have to just do, right? This goes back to a lot of the samurai examples that I use. It's like you draw the sword, that's the end of it. All right. Now, this is not to have this my way or the highway. That's not the point, right? The point is within yourself. The drawing of the blade is within yourself. Okay. She can agree or not agree. That's not the relevant point. The point is that you trust yourself that when this blade is drawn, I am not going back on the decision that I've made within myself. That's what it means. So it's like a my way or the highway with myself first. Okay. And then she can trust that more steadily because you're like, oh, she looks and she's like, oh, this guy is ones and zeros when it comes to himself, to trusting himself. Either he does or he doesn't. And it's that clear. Another one here is to be transparent with your standards, right? This is part of the sovereignty, not just with what you want, but why you want it. Now, a lot of guys, they will advocate for standards mostly to make themselves feel safe, mostly to make themselves feel better, to stroke their own egos, okay? Your standards should be more about the betterment of the relationship, okay? So you look at the military, for example, or you look at a business, for example. They're not having rules of conduct so that the general or so that the CEO or the business owner can feel better about themselves and go, oh, great, look at how well behaved everyone is. I feel awesome about myself. No, that's not why the military does that. They do it so they can have strength and continuity as a system. So you got to stop thinking about yourself and your little fucking feelings and your pee and start thinking of a system wide, okay? System wide structure. If you think small, you'll get small. If you think big, you'll get big, right? Provided you're putting in effort. So I hope this makes sense, right? You have to think of the entire relationship structure as a whole, not you, okay? Now, granted, it's based off of you. It's based off of your program. It's based off your constitution, right? So it's an extension of you, but it lives on its own. Third one here is speak rarely, but with depth. Weight in words is more persuasive than frequency. And a lot of you guys run your fucking mouths way too much. Way too much. When dealing with women, you get into it with them. You argue, you bicker, you barter, you negotiate, you back and forth, you fight, you butt heads, you swindle, you try to outsmart, okay? All too much. Like that shows you're not grounded, okay? Again, like going back to the client that I was mentioning before. She, his girlfriend, she made a request to go do something, not super far away, but just like, little road trip, whatever. And his answer was like on the phone, like if like scale on screens, it was like this fucking big. It was huge. Of first explaining why he's doing the thing and then how he wants to hear it and this, that, and the other. And I said, look at all those fucking words. You could have said, that's great. I love your enthusiasm, but this is how I'd like you to ask. And then put in quotes, one sentence, can we please go do X tomorrow? End quote. My message was this big. Okay? Because that's the essential. You get down to the essentials. But the reason why you guys can't get to the essentials is because you're afraid if you're that fucking clear, she might not like it. She might push back. She might say no. She might say, I don't like how you talk to me like that, or this or that, or whatever sort of like fantasy fear is in your head. You're going to imagine that. And that's what makes you afraid to be that direct, concise, and clear. It's really not complicated, but you make it more complicated in an effort to avoid the inevitable, right? Which is having that interaction. You'd rather just, I bet a lot of you guys would just rather not have to say anything at all, and then she would just do it. Again, prepackaged. Why can't you just be prepackaged perfect and just follow me and not even ask questions? Just do what I do. You guys are fucking weird, man. All right, so establishing sovereignty, that's the first part there, okay? So I was saying don't negotiate your authority, be transparent with your standards, speak rarely but with depth. Number 2, disarm her independence without threatening it. Okay, so this is where it gets a little trickier, okay? You have to understand of, like I was in the first part of this when I was saying, knowing when to challenge her and when to soften, pushing only to the limits where she is capable of transcending her resistance, okay? So like if you've ever done anything having to do with any kind of training, be it like martial arts training, physical fitness training, weight training, you have to feel where your limit is and be able to feather that, like, because sometimes you need to soften against that limit, and then other times you need to push past it just a little bit and then work right up to it and then soften, push past in various patterns. But either way, you have to understand like where that line is of of resistance. Okay. And that's just how you grow. Like even something simple as like stretching. Okay. Like if you want to work on like, like a seated split, like you have to understand like where your resistance point is so that then you know when to soften against it and when to push through it. Okay. So disarm her dependence without threatening it. A woman who is not naturally submissive clings to control because she associates it with safety. Your task is to show her she is safer in your hands than in her own. Okay. Yes, I know that sounds tricky. It's not easy. But like I said, none of this shit is. Okay? If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. What's up, Uncle Guns? Thanks for posting these. Yep. Consultation. Yep, that's it there. Okay, so going back here. So showing her that she's safer in your hands than in her own. So take responsibility for something she normally controls. So time management, dress choices for an evening. It could be something fun like choosing her underwear for the week. Okay. Or just like a couple days out of the week. Right. So it can start with just something in the real world. Okay, because it has to start somewhere, and things of touchable reality, versus like internal world, that's easier to access. Okay, so I'm not sitting here advocating that you start managing her life. Okay, taking control of the things in her life and being this like simp lord where you're doing everything for her. That's not the point. Okay, what this is it's like a conduit to lead to the internal world, right? So don't take the surface stuff too seriously. All right, it's just an exercise for a further end, just a means to an end. So take responsibility for something she normally controls. Another one is to set a boundary and hold it calmly, even when tested, especially when tested. So this is really going to be a practice within yourself. All right. And in this, so because like the whole idea, like I said, that disarming her independence without threatening it, this challenges that layer of armor. Okay. All of your boundaries do. Okay. But start with something simple. Okay. Start with a certain and it has to be with you. All right. So don't think like the boundaries have to do with her behavior. Okay. Like let's say she likes to go to happy hour, twice a week after work, and you don't like that. Your boundary can't be you're not allowed to go to happy hour anymore. Okay. That's not what I mean. It's more so to do with you or how she treats you. Okay. So like a simple one would be interrupting in conversation. Okay. Really, really easy. Okay. Saying please and thank you. Right? Having gratitude, like that sort of stuff. Manners is a super easy one. All right. So it first starts, obviously, easier to uphold if you do it yourself. Okay. So don't be this mindless, rude bastard and then expect her to have manners. Okay. So that's something, right? Manners or interrupting, really easy boundary to hold. Okay. And another one here, the third one here, is compliment her strength, but invite her to rest it. She must be allowed to be soft. So you can recognize. So, all right. For a lot of women, okay, that wear armor, they're so used to it that they don't realize that they're wearing armor. So this is like a multi-edged thing here by complimenting her strength. Right? Again, this is a means to an end. It's not about caping for the woman or simping towards her or like the compliments. None of this really means anything. Okay. It's a device to get somewhere else. And the first part of this device is drawing attention to the armor itself, which is complementing her strength. Where, like, let's say she had a really busy day at work or something like that, or some sort of family matter, and she handled it with grace and authority, and she kind of like really focused and all this sort of thing, and all kinds of crazy shit happened, but she kept it together and all this stuff. And she tells you about it. And you recognize all these things that she's done, and you compliment her for her strength. Okay. But then from there, because that's the recognizing there's this existence of armor, that's when you can start encouraging her to remove it in your presence. Okay. So when it crops up, you can then say, remind her, bring it to her attention that she has this strength, and it's amazing. It's great for the things that she's done out there. Okay. But in here, it's not necessary. Now you can't say, take it off. It's basically glued to her skin. Okay. It's something that she has to willingly let go of. Okay. If you pull, it will resist. It's something that lets go with no tension. Sort of like oobleck. Have you ever played with oobleck? I don't remember the ratios or something. I think it's like a 1-to-1 ratio of flour and water, or is it baking soda and water? I don't remember. It's like something like elementary school kids do. They make it in class in a Ziploc bag, and they add food coloring. They're like, oh, look at this crazy stuff that I made at school. But it's a really interesting like concoction. I think it's called a Newtonian solid. And what happens is that when you grip it really hard, the cells quickly come together really, really fast and very close together, to the point where the harder you grip it, the denser it becomes. Now, it's not infinite, right? It's not like it'll, like deflect bullets or something like that. It does have a breaking point after a while, but within your grasp, it gets harder and harder and harder the more you squeeze it. Okay. But the moment you let go and just let it relax in your hand, it turns to this oozing goo. Okay. And that's how her armor must be dealt with. If you challenge it directly, it will do exactly what it does: deflect. It will protect. If you try to remove it by showing her, like, very overtly that she's wearing armor and that it's damaging her and it's ruining the relationship and blah, 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 all right, that's going to make her just tighten it even more. She's going to pull the straps down so that the armor fits even tighter. Okay. It's presenting in such a way that you recognize that it's been worn. It has served a great purpose, but it's unnecessary here. That it poses no advantage in the relationship, and that she's welcome to take it off, and then it's okay, right? And you're not going to rush her. She can take it off at her own pace, but you're inviting her to do this, that she's allowed to be soft, right? The key thing is that when she is feeling soft in these moments, okay, when she just, say, takes the helmet off, and when she takes the helmet off, then you bring her awareness, and let's say she's feeling good, she's feeling submissive, she's feeling open and vulnerable and soft and like she's just lovely. You bring her attention to not what she's doing, but how she's feeling in that moment. Because women, like, shout out to Miles, like he's always saying, women behave and think and do based on how they feel in the moment. Okay. So the moment is the most important place. Most important place. So when she is feeling this way, bring her awareness to it. Right? Hey, baby, see how you're feeling right now? How does that feel? Tell me how you feel. And she's like, oh, maybe she may not be able to put it into words. Maybe she'll just feel like, oh, I feel really good. And it's like, that's awesome. Wouldn't you like to feel this way more often? And then you don't make a plan. You don't explain anything. She probably will say, yeah. Me too. And that's it. Just leave it at that, okay? Because it's all about just planting these seeds. Because at some point, that helmet's going to go back on. But guess what? The seed has been planted in there. Then the helmet's put on, okay? And this is a process of parts of the armor coming off, planting seeds, and then it goes back on. And it takes time. eventually to where those seeds start germinating, then slowly the armor can come off. Okay, provided you've got the first parts going on in there with establishing not your authority, but your sovereignty and your consistency, which allows trust to develop. Okay. All right, number 3, introduce ritual. Introducing ritual. What's up, boxing? So, rituals, they break the mundane and inserts the sacred, right? It's the ritual that a woman transitions from wellness to will offering. I'm sorry, I misspoke. It is through ritual that a woman transitions from willfulness to will offering. All right. And that's a huge step. And I know a lot of you guys are still just wanting to operate on willfulness, right? Just having a girl who is willingly wanting to do something and be a certain way. So I get it. So ritual might be a little advanced, but it's a really important thing here. Okay. Because what do rituals do? Rituals, they signify a mindset. Okay, now I don't know how it is with other religions, but I remember when I was a kid, I was raised Roman Catholic, and but not for very long. I think I chose to stop going to church when I was like, I don't know, 12 years old or something like that. I was just like, this is bollocks. I don't get it. I don't like it. I'm bored. I'm not going anymore. And perhaps if it was a different church, I don't know, but like Catholics, man, you guys drag on and on and on, and the standing and the sitting and the standing and the sitting. And it's like, holy shit, like I've got things to do today. And this service is taking like 4 hours long. Okay. Forget about going to like a traditional Roman Catholic wedding. Holy shit, those things take forever. But anyways, I remember that, when you go to the pew, it's tradition to kneel, take off your hat, kneel and cross yourself, and then you can sit down, if you're wearing a hat. And that's this ritual. And that very, very simple ritual. It's not something, really grandiose or anything like that. It's really, really simple. It's humble, right? You kneel, cross yourself, and you sit down. But that very simple act sets the tone. That's what it's meant to do. It's meant to align your mind with like, okay, we're here now doing this special thing, right? So get your head and your heart in order. Remember where you are, and we're here for a purpose, and this is what we're doing now. Okay, so it kind of like locks in. All right. So that's what rituals do. They help lock in, as the kids say today. So they break the mundane and inserts the sacred. So what you can do is you create simple, repeatable acts. Okay, a greeting posture, and this again might be more advanced, but greeting postures, kneeling before bed, phrases she says when receiving permission, or when being granted permission. So, or just the permission at all. Okay, so just having her ask for permission to do certain things. All right. And again, it shouldn't be restrictive. It like to move things in the direction. It's just placing these things in stuff that they already do. Okay. So like a simple one of like, the greeting. Okay. The greeting could be simple as taking your jacket, your shoes, and your coat every single time you come home, or every single time you go over to her place. Okay. Every single time that she comes to your place, there could be some kind of greeting ritual. All right. I told you about this one with the sub that I had, where I would come in and she would kiss the palm of my right hand. It would be done this way every single time before there's a hug and a kiss. Okay. And it creates a more of this sacred, like, we're here now, we're doing this kind of thing now. All right. Now it doesn't have to be that theatrical. All right. So use your imagination and work with things that are within the bounds of your relationship. Okay. But they can go into a greeting posture, you know, waiting for you at the door on her knees or what have you. But as far as like the permission, like being granted permission, um, it can be something as simple as like, let's say, like clockwork, she goes to the gym every Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Doesn't miss a fucking day. Okay. But you bring up this concept. All right. Let's say she's open minded. All right. At this point, and you say, listen, you already go. And what I'd like to do is have you ask permission to go to the gym Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Understand that I'm almost never going to say no, because that's not the point. The point is not about me having control over these things. All right. Now, you don't have to explain this part, but it might help depending on the girl. Is that it's about getting her mind into just the practice of deference, into the practice of deferring to, wait a second, before I make this decision, let me check with him first. You want her to get used to that. So a great way to do that is with something she already does. So it's not going to be, and then having her understand that it's not like you're going to say no. That's not the point. The point is just to get used to asking, right? And then this can extend into further and further things. Okay. So let me move on. Phrases, receiving permission. Okay. So consistent verbal structures. So like when I'm starting something, I know, granted, it's easier when you're first starting. It's harder when you already have an established relationship. But I don't accept yeah or uh-huh or uh-uh. None of that stuff. Okay. No abbreviated stuff, like no BC for because. I don't like shortened stuff. I like clear, full sentences. Clear, full questions, clear, full statements with the use of sir or my lord or whatever sort of titles that we agree upon. Okay. Consistent verbal structures. Okay. And it would be like, yes, sir, no, sir, may I, sir, that sort of stuff. Okay. Now, if you're not into titles just yet or whatever, it could be just yes, no, maybe like very like clear words. Okay. Asking, may I, right? I even like work into like the questions. The question themselves have to have permission. So it's like, sir, may I ask you a question? Right? The way I run things is like very much the way the military works. Right? Like the soldiers, they can't just blurt out stuff, right? They say like, sir, may I speak frankly, or may I speak freely, or whatever, you know? Everything has to be asked because, you know, in the military, you're it's a whole position of service. You're not really like an individual anymore. But anyways, so using consistent verbal structures, this will help. It doesn't have to go into titles, all right? But it does help to say, okay, we're not going to be using like this type of language with each other. And it, again, like with the other stuff, you have to be the example. So you have to start training your own speech to align with the things that you'd like expect from her. Okay? Don't be a hypocrite. So these train her tongue to honor order, structure. Okay? And the third one here for introducing ritual is anchor these in the body. So her body must learn to follow before her mind fully agrees. So if you're in proximity, okay, you can anchor these things. Like when she does adhere to this stuff, you can then offer praise with just a verbal recognition. It can be combined with touching her with like a kiss on the cheek, a kiss on the forehead, a little pat on the butt, like something to reinforce that by her following this stuff, it makes you happy. And then you give some of that happiness back to her. That's the whole idea. And you start spinning this cycle, okay? And it starts off very gently, just so that her psyche can start understanding, if I do this, it makes him feel happy, and then I feel good because he gives some of it back to me, okay? And so again, it's a slow process, but this is, a way of creating ritual, patterns. Okay, so the whole idea, like a ritual, is basically is a significant pattern that you do all the time. Okay, now it doesn't have to be something grandiose, something over the top, something majestic, right? When we think of the word ritual, right, it doesn't have to be a blood sacrifice. Okay, it's just something that is significant. Okay, that brings attention and awareness to a certain situation or certain behaviors. Okay, so number 4 here, use a psychological contrast. All right. So submissiveness becomes seductive when it's contrasted with the dominance that inspires it. So you have to understand the balance between being stern and tender. She should feel a subtle ache when your warmth is withheld. Okay. So I've got a client who's, he's kind of back and forth with, with what's going on in his situation, and she fluctuates, right? She softens, pulls off her armor or some of it, and then something kind of like jolts her or whatever. She spooks and then puts her armor back on, right? And and this just happens, right? It'll happen to you too, right? It's happened to me many times, and that's just the nature of things. Like, humans are just, we're complex, but you have to understand the mindfulness and the balance, the dance between being stern and being tender. Okay, so there's no like perfect roadmap, right? It requires your awareness, your ability to be paying attention, to get sharper, like all the time. Okay, leadership is not a dull position. You cannot have a dull mind and be a leader. You have to be sharp. So if you want to be a leader, you have to sharpen your mind. You have to sharpen your awareness. You have to sharpen your ability to play chess, to understand, like, she's going this way, but you want her to go this way. And then through words, be able to guide her through that. Now, maybe it's not going to be completely in the direction that you want, but it's certainly not going this way. Okay, maybe it goes like this instead of like this, but it's not going like this. And that's just what the taking time part comes into play, right? But you have to master the balance between being stern and tender. And this is something that, like, a lot of guys just fuck up, okay? Because, like, let's face it, a lot of guys are nice guys. Like, they're really easygoing, conflict avoidant, nice guys who have nice guy syndrome. And they don't want to butt heads. They don't want to rock the boat or potentially rock the boat. So they avoid anything that might bring about conflict. And they think that by being stern, or being even perceived as being stern, is getting way too close to rocking the boat. And if they rock the boat, there might be a fight. She might not like me anymore. She might want to break up with me. She might get upset, and then I have to deal with that. And I don't know how to deal with that, right? So they just remain being nice, and they avoid being stern, okay? But you have to be all right with being stern. And no, that does not mean, whacking open the throttle on sternness so that you can feel like you're doing it right, okay? It's not an on-off switch, okay? It's a blending, okay? It's a blending process of smoothness, okay? We'd be in a lot of trouble if the foot pedal in our car was like an on-off switch, and when it was on, it's like full throttle. There's full throttle and there's no throttle. We can't operate like that, okay? We have to be able to feather the throttle, okay? And through positive reinforcement, so like when she does, remember I was talking about how when she removes the armor for those moments and she gets to feel your containment, right, which involves safety, warmth, your tenderness, your guidance, your protection, right, of her emotions and of her mind, okay? And then you make her recognize this by bringing her awareness to this. How do you feel right now? Tell me how you feel right now. And having her recognize how good she feels, okay? And then have her slowly through time understands that when she does this, when she behaves this way, when she thinks this way, when she talks this way, she gets more of you. She gets the things that make her feel softer and more tender. Okay? The warmth that you have. And then she should feel a subtle ache when your warmth is withheld. And this is the other thing that guys who have nice guy syndrome, which is a fuck ton of you in varying degrees, okay? You're so scared to withhold your warmth. And you only do it when you, like, out of spite, right? When you do withhold your warmth, it's out of spite. Oh my God, I took that bitch out to dinner. It was a $400 bill, and she just went straight to bed. She didn't even touch my dick. Oh, that fucking bitch. Right? So many of you guys act like this. So many. Okay? And then the next day, you're cold. Right? Good morning. Right? Or you don't even say good morning. She's like, good morning, honey. And you're like, What's your problem? Nothing. Now you're acting like a moody, passive aggressive woman. Nothing. I'm going to the gym. Yeah, that's not being dominant. That's not being a leader. That's not being a man. That's being a little boy who didn't get his pee-pee touched, and he's upset about it. Okay? Who had covert contracts that if I do this, then mommy will praise me. Mommy will touch me. Right? And yeah, it's like that. It's fucked up. Okay? So when most guys withhold their warmth, it's not out of strategy, it's out of spite. That's not withholding warmth. The way I'm talking about withholding warmth is to teach her psychological and emotional contrast. Okay? You can't be in this and be like emotional and attached and like in it, like in the water. Okay? You can't be in it if you want to lead, if you want to dominate. You have to be slightly detached. Okay? Like you're in a lake or something like that, or like a small like swimming area. You can't be submerged. Like you can be in the water, but standing up. So the water is like at your waist. So you can see everything that's happening. Like you're there. Other people are swimming around, having fun, whatever, but you're standing. You're standing in the water so you can see everything. You get a lay of the land. You understand what the fuck's going on. So you can plan, you can see things coming, you can see things going. You know what's happening. Okay? Yes, you have to be a little detached if you want to fucking lead. That's the reality of it, which means having control of your emotions, having control of your mind, being more decisive, not being reactive, not being spiteful, not being a little bitch, dealing with your fucking mommy and daddy issues. All right? Like this man shit is fucking real. It's a real thing that you cannot copy. You can't copy it, no matter how hard you try. It can't be done. You will get found out, and it will blow up in your face, no matter how hard you try. It's something that's developed through work, through introspection, through having a guide. That's how this is done. You can't achieve it through watching videos like this. It doesn't work. There's no video that can answer for every guy on his path because all the paths are different. So you cannot find the way through videos. You must have a guide. You must have a teacher. You must have your own master. You must be a Padawan to someone who's a Jedi. That's how it works. Sorry to say. Okay, moving on here. So both stern and tender. Reward feminine softness, not just obedience. Okay. So remember what I was saying, that obedience is just the actions, right? So you say, when I'm done, when we're done eating dinner, I want you to take my plate from the table. Okay. Now, she could take the plate and love every moment of it, or she could take the plate and think you're a disgusting retard. And she's just doing it, but inside she's just full of resentment. But on the surface, they both look the same, don't they? And if you're satisfied with just the actions, you don't give a fuck about whatever else, that's fine, right? You can totally run your program that way. As long as it's getting done, I don't give a fuck what's on your mind. I don't care how you feel. I don't care what state of being you're in. Just get it done, okay? And that's like how a business owner thinks. They don't care how you feel. They don't care what's going on in your life. They don't care how, what stage of development you are on your path of like self-awareness or whatever. They don't care. Are you showing up to work? Are you getting the job done? Are you making money? Are you making progress? Or are you fucking detriment to the company? That's what they care about. And you can have that mentality, totally, okay? But don't expect depth. Don't expect her to have submission, to surrender into your frame, into your will, into your being, when you're just more concerned about obedience. Okay? Just understand that. And you don't have to want those other things. Okay? You can want what you want. It's free world. All right? So reward feminine softness, not just obedience. So absolutely be mindful, pay attention, recognize and acknowledge and sometimes reward the obedience. Okay? At the same time, you need to recognize and acknowledge and sometimes reward her feminine softness. And this is just in her character, in her being, the way she talks, the way she moves, like just in, say, a simple thing of like the deference, right? Where she catches herself and then asks you first. And you catch her doing these things, you're like, oh, okay, cool. Like, and you want to bring that to her attention, that you see that there's something kind of like unearthing within her. Okay? That the petals are like opening up. Bring awareness to this, but without praising too much, okay? Because for a girl who has been wearing armor her whole life, something like that might cause her to retract, okay? Because a lot of times they might feel embarrassed about this. They might feel scared. They might feel too vulnerable to even a compliment, okay? So you have to, again, like gauge your softness. You don't want to praise too heavy because it could cause them to recoil, okay? It might be too much sun for their eyes, okay? So you have to be gauging and calibrate how you praise and how you reward that softness, okay? And then again, clearly acknowledge and sometimes reward the obedience, the things that you've asked her to do, or the things that she's clearly doing regularly and consistently that you've not even asked her to do, okay? So like one of my guys, like when she comes over to his place, she always picks up. She's always like making sure everything's tidy, put laundry away. She's doing this, dirty's going in the hamper, making sure just everything in the kitchen's clean and organized, this. He's not asked her to do these things. It's just part of like how she was raised, and she enjoys this sort of thing. Okay. Now, it's important to take that natural behavior that you like and acknowledge it. Okay. And it's important how you acknowledge it. You don't just say, hey, good job doing that stuff. It's like, what stuff? Okay, like, does that feel significant? Not really. All right. So you bring her over, sit her down, give her a kiss, have her sit on your lap or whatever feels like, close, right? And, she could be on her knees in front of you, however you guys roll. All right. And say, listen, baby, I've noticed that since we've been seeing each other, you've been coming over, and every single time you come over, now it's not every day that you come over, but when you do, it's always you just going around real quick and making sure everything is clean and tidy and looking good. And I love that about you. And I just wanted to bring that to your attention, that I see that. And because of that, right? And now you could just stop at the praise and the acknowledgement, the recognition, and you say, this is great. I love it. It's so fucking sexy. And you could leave it at that. Okay. Or you could say, and because of that, we've been seeing each other for 3 weeks, and every time this is what you do. And because of that, we're going to go do this. Or because of that, I got you this, right? Give her just a small present. Or you'd say, we're going to go to the movies. We're going to go get some ice cream. Maybe she fucking loves to play mini golf, but you never get to, right? And say, I've reserved us a slot to go play mini golf at 7:30. And she's like, oh, really? You say, yeah, well, it's because of this, right? And so bringing recognition that her actions have a positive effect and that she gets things from it, okay? That's just going to incentivize her to be more mindful and maybe even start asking you, what would you like to see me do now, right? What do you need done? What do you need help with? How can I help more? Okay. Because she wants that feel good stuff. She wants those rewards, be it just verbal, emotional, or physical. Okay. So, reward the feminine. Okay. And make her feel seen when she yields. So this is similar to what I was just saying before. Make her feel seen when she yields and unseen when she resists. All right. Now, this is not to be confused with stonewalling. Okay. But you're just not going to engage with it. All right. You act as though you don't see it at all. All right. So you pay attention to only what you want to see, not what you don't want to see. Okay. That it kind of goes in line with that crazy shit that you hear people say, when they're talking about, what is it? Manifestation. Okay. They say the general notion is that wherever your thoughts collect, that's what you're calling into reality. All right. So if you're constantly worrying about, oh my gosh, I hope I don't get into a car accident. I hope the weather's not going to be bad today. And you're constantly saying, I hope the weather's not bad today. I hope I don't get into a car accident. You're actually telling the universe, I want bad weather and I want to get into a car accident. All right. Because even though your words are saying, I don't want this, those are the only words you're using. Okay. So, and then they say well, then the universe is going to act in kind. Okay. But if you're saying, I am so looking forward to good weather this week. I love beautiful days. I love driving my car. I can't wait to get out on the road. I love driving. It's so much fun. Then you're putting that out into the world. Okay. So in the same sense here, you want to make her feel seen when she yields. Okay. By giving that's positive reinforcement. And you don't want to give any reinforcement to the things you don't want to see. Okay. The only time this is done, the only time is when things have progressed and you two have agreed upon a set of rules, right? A set of codes of conduct that, she's agreed to do this and this and this and this and this. And number 6, she just repeatedly fucking forgets. Okay. That's when you need to bring attention to that. Okay. Or there's a resistance to, say, a rule. Okay. That's when you bring attention to it and say, oh, okay, listen, we agreed on these rules 3 months ago, and you're consistently resistant towards number 6. So we're going to address this. We're going to talk about it. And then there's going to be some sort of consequence. Right. And, there's many different ways to deal with the consequences. And that's not the point. But until you have that sort of stuff, don't even pay attention to what you don't want to see. Okay? Even if you think she's being crazy and you take whatever she's saying as disrespectful, when we all know that's just you getting your feelings hurt, ignore it. Ignore the behavior. Right? And, some guys will be like, well, what if she throws a frying pan at my head? Well, at that point, you just have chosen really fucking poorly and you just leave. You excuse yourself from the situation. If you stick around, that's your fault and you deserve the suffering because you're not choosing to leave. Remember, you're always leading as a man. Always. Even when you're not intention or with the intention to. So make her feel seen when she yields and unseen when she resists. The feminine blooms when attention is earned, not given indiscriminately. Okay. So this is the whole notion of being mindful, is that you need to be mindful of everything you say and do with regard to her. I mean, you should be within yourself as well. But when it comes to your interaction with the woman, you really have to be on top of everything you say. Nothing can be a knee jerk reaction. Okay. Nothing can be just a habitual response. You really have to be to think out how these things are going to play out and be decisive and clear of how you're going to act, or if you're choosing not to act, understand why. All right. And sometimes that requires an explanation. You're not getting this because of this. Right. And sometimes a firm hand needs to happen. But that's what I've mentioned before. Okay. Of understanding of when to be firm and when to be soft. Okay. Because both ways are good for leadership. Leadership is not just about being firm and hard. Okay. There are some times that require softness in order to guide. Again, you cannot rip a woman's armor off by force. Okay. Your power, which can take the form of softness, can encourage her to let go. Okay. All right. So number 5 here, introduce controlled surrender exercises. You're not forcing her submission. You are inviting her to taste its pleasure. So this comes into some gameplay. All right. So for example here, blindfold her and guide her only by voice. Make her follow without sight. So, you could do this at home. All right. Maybe clear with some furniture so she doesn't bang her knees on shit. Okay. You can start by just holding her hand. All right. And this might be a fun game to play. All right. So you can do this together. Say you go for a walk in the park and you bring a blindfold and say, all right, we're going to try this. You want to play a game? It's well, what kind of game? It's well, it's a game called Follow the Leader. And you put a thin blindfold on her. And then so she doesn't look like a weirdo, you just have her wear sunglasses on top of that. All right. And you hold her hand and walk her through the park. All right. And go for a long walk. And you can tell her that there's a duration. So say, we're going to do this for 20 minutes. All right. Hold on a second. All right, excuse me just a second. I'll just turn up some music for you. I've got a little bit of a situation to handle. So bear with me, talks amongst yourselves. All right. Thanks for being patient. Appreciate that. All right. So where were we? All right. The introducing controlled surrender exercises. All right. So the blindfolding. All right. Another one is to have her ask for things she would normally take, right? Not out of humiliation, but out of reorienting to your structure. All right. So something she would normally take. So like something simple, like brushing her teeth at night. Just have her just as like, and you can introduce it as just as gameplay, right? Nothing serious, right? You're not, again, this is like an invitation, right? Invite her to just trying these things out and having her ask permission for, again, just simple things that she would normally does or normally she takes for herself, and help her understand that it's not about feeling bad or feeling small, right? But out of reorienting towards your structure. Okay. And when she resists, okay, because it may come up, right? When she resists, you ask why, right? Don't argue, mirror her contradiction back to her until she sees it. And this is really important because you will come across resistance. And it's just important that you're not asking why for your understanding. It's so that she can hear her own reasoning. And a lot of times it can come off as being silly. So yes, it's a slow process of exposing her to herself. And it takes time, right? And also it can be challenging based on how much armor or how thick the woman's armor is. And that's just the way it goes sometimes, right? Sometimes it's difficult and sometimes it's easier. Depends on the lady, right? So again, like there's no one set path and how to do this, right? These are all suggestions. Okay, moving on to number 6. Create emotional dependency on your approval. All right, now this is kind of getting into more of like, dark triad sort of stuff. But and I'm hoping that it's not for you guys like coming out from a place of fear, coming from a place of desiring control for control's sake, because you are narcissistic, because you're needy, because you're fearful, none of that stuff. Okay. But more from the loving father. Okay. Because loving father wants understands the benefits of having, say, a child not requiring but desiring the approval of their parent. Okay, because when you give it strengthens them. They stand up a little straighter. They believe in themselves more, right? It's a very powerful tool, right? So understand that this isn't manipulation, it's cultivation. So praise is not to be overused. It's rare and valuable. So when she pleases you, she needs to feel its weight. Right? So don't give praise for every single thing all the time. Okay? Make it rare, make it sporadic, make it intermittent. All right? So maybe for a thing that she's consistent on, she hears praise sometime and then doesn't other times. And that's this is how like casinos work, like with slot machines. That's the psychology behind how they program them, and it's not random, right? They have them programmed a certain way, and they use intermittent reinforcement to keep your psyche locked into that thing and keep dropping quarters in. Disapproval, excuse me, disapproval should not come as anger. Never, right? Because men, we don't react with our emotions, right? We respond with our structure. So disapproval should not come as anger, but as distance. It should come as bringing awareness to her behavior, right? The feminine soul cannot bear emotional distance from the masculine it adores or the masculine container it feels most free in. So you see, like, all these things kind of work in tandem. It's not like you go through each stage one at a time. These aren't stages. These are all things that you can utilize at the same time. All right. So, like I said, the feminine soul cannot bear emotional distance from its masculine container, the masculine energy that it adores, that it needs. So you, again, when you have to kind of reduce some of that, it's not to manipulate her. It's to cultivate more of what you want, okay? To cultivate gratitude, to cultivate more of her submissive nature, to come out and feel safe, all right? And then when she's resistant to these things, when she puts up armor, when she does this, when she does that, she doesn't get the approval. So she starts learning, like, consciously and subconsciously, that, like, all right, when I do these things, I feel better. I get the praise. I feel safer. I feel the support. I get his approval. My spine feels straighter. I feel more grounded. I want that to continue. Right? And that's sort of the attitude that you want to cultivate. So the last part here with number 6 is build her self-worth, not in abstract terms, but in how well she reflects your will. Let her become proud of pleasing you. And this is really an important aspect, okay? Self-worth, like when we talk about self-worth, think about just videos on YouTube, other conversations. Oh, you have to, increase your self-worth. But it's always talked about in these abstract conceptual terms. That's not really, it's fine to have conversations about it in this way. But when you're dealing with a submissive or you're dealing with a woman that you're trying to cultivate submission in, it has to be very clear. Right. And I said here, build her self-worth not in abstract terms, but in how well she reflects your will, which means your will has to be clear enough to reflect. It cannot be murky. It cannot be second guessing itself. This goes all the way back to the very beginning, right? With number 1, establishing your sovereignty. Make decisions with calm finality and clarity, right? Because if you're not clear, how well is she going to reflect your will? Okay, goes back to my client who was getting too fucking wordy with a simple thing. When you want to ask questions, it sounds like this. Da 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 da. Okay, so just know that the core of a woman, her feminine core, is to reflect. Is much like a calm lake of water. Okay. If you've ever flown low over like a body of water or something like that, or even just looked out over like a calm, undisturbed lake, it's almost like a mirror. It's like a soft mirror. It's not like a hard mirror. It's a soft mirror. That's what the woman is. That's the feminine core. And check this out. It can only be that still when it has a firm container. Right? The ocean can never be that still because the ocean doesn't have a container. It's constantly in movement. But a lake is contained. It's a contained body of water. Now, it can be upset by the weather. It can be upset by the wind, by boats, fish, and things like that. But without those variables considered, it can become very, very calm and still and almost be as clear as glass, right? Or as reflective as a mirror. So your container must be such so that she can be reflectant of your will, and your container is cultivated by way of being clear with your own will towards yourself, taking care of your anxieties, getting rid of your fears, dealing with your insecurities, like all of that shit. Okay. The third part here, oh no, I did go that. Okay, reflecting your will, let her become proud of pleasing you. All right. Number 7, deepen the erotic link between obedience and pleasure. Oh boy, getting excited now. When her body begins to crave obedience, you've entered the alchemical phase. So you can train her arousal to follow structure. All right. So this is where pleasure is falling under your command. So a very simple one would be like, you may touch yourself, but only when I say. All right. And this can go into very deep realms. Okay. Very, very deep, where basically you start doing things to link her arousal with your structure, so that your structure becomes a point of arousal, such that when she does something according to your will, it turns her on, like literally makes her wet. Okay. When you give her praise with key words, it makes her wet. It makes her body respond. Okay. Makes her pussy twitch on its own. Right. So many things. All right. But the basic idea is that your structure becomes a point of arousal. And I gave you the example here, a simple one. You may touch yourself only when I say. All right. Another aspect would be denial followed by reward. So not as punishment, but as artful calibration. So denial, such as like orgasm denial, right? So say you're playing with her, you're getting her super aroused, you're playing with her pussy or nipples, whatever other, sensitive spot are on her body. You have a vibrator on her clit, and she's getting really, really close to orgasm. Okay. And you pull it away and you say, remember, not until I say. And then you go back and you bring her up to the edge again. And then she's just about to come, you pull it away. You say, no, not until I say, right? And then at this point, you can bring in a pathway to make the orgasm into a reward, okay? So you could say just something simple, like, you're not gonna come until you say, I'm a good girl. Something similar. I mean, it could be anything really, okay? Because it's not about the context or the content, it's about that she's doing something that you're telling her to do. Okay. So you could say, like, not until you say, I'm a good girl, right? So you start edging her again, bringing her up to the edge. Say she says, I'm a good girl. You say, I don't believe you. That didn't sound sincere enough. And you take it away. And then you start edging her again. Her arousal just keeps creeping every single time you go up and plateau, up and plateau, up and plateau. Okay. Now it's getting to this like fever pitch. Okay. Now she's saying, I'm a good girl, but with almost frantic, right? I'm a good girl. I'm a good girl. Like, please, basically she's saying, like, please let me come. But in the words that she's using is saying, I'm a good girl. You see? So now those feelings, those intense arousal feelings, are tied to this phrase, or you're tying them to this phrase, I'm a good girl. Okay? And you say, you are a good girl. You can come now. And then as she's coming, right, you then give the instruction, come now. Now, of course, your words aren't making her body respond, but you're starting that thread. Okay? You're starting to sew that thread between your words of saying, come now, and her having an orgasm. Okay? And you do this over time amongst a whole host of other techniques to where you can just say the words, come now, and she does. Okay? I've been working since March, probably like April, with a submissive, using particular techniques. And it's getting to the point where I can say come now without her even being in a state of arousal. Okay. It's not complete zero arousal, but it's fairly low arousal. And eventually it'll be to the point of no arousal. And I will say, come now, and there will be an orgasm. Okay. So I'm very close with this one. It'll probably be like another couple of weeks. Okay. So, but it starts with the denials. It starts with that simple thing that I mentioned, just with the vibrator, with like the edging, the peaking and denial, and then allowing her to, and then you inserting this come now. Okay. And that becomes, it's not as punishment, it's not really like a reward, but you're creating this like calibrated, unified situation, right? That's like kind of stitching together your leadership, her submission, her pleasure, her arousal, and structure of like following you. Okay, so it's like all these things are getting like stitched together, and on top of it, she's just feeling really good. So it makes the stitching a lot easier. Okay. So then the last one here is her orgasm becomes a gift granted by structure, not a chaotic outcome of impulse, right? And that's kind of where you kind of want to lead this to, is that, you know, basically the end goal is that her orgasms are something that she's letting go of ownership of. She's saying, you know, I'm okay with this. I'm fine. It actually is arousing to me that I'm giving my orgasms to someone else to control. I don't have ownership over them anymore. When I have them, I see them as a gift and something that I've earned. And I've talked about this many times in different contexts, that in pretty much any situation, if you're given something for free, it's not valued as much as if you're given that same thing by earning it. That's just the way of the world. Now, it's just weird in this context, is something to adjust to, because, you know, we consider something like our own physical pleasure as just something that's ours, that we like, it's weird to like hand it over to somebody else, okay, that I would have to earn, right? When she spends, you know, 10, 20, 30 years or whatever commanding her own pleasure, like just whenever she felt like it, okay? But you can pose it as just something to try, something fun to try for a little while, and then you revisit it, okay? And say, okay, we've been doing this for a little while. How do you feel about this? Reflect on your feeling, okay? Tell me how it feels to you know, exercise a bit of trust and a little bit of fun in letting go of control of your pleasure to someone else, to me. What does that feel like? And get her to open up, and you use techniques like mirroring and labeling, right? Mirroring is basically you repeat the things back to them to allow them to open up more. So she's like, well, you know, it was interesting, but it felt kind of good. And I say, it was interesting? And she's like, well, yeah, because basically when you do that, you mirror, and you make it a question. It was interesting. You're basically asking them without asking, can you open up that a little bit more? And she'll probably say, well, yeah, it was like this. And she tries to explain these things. And then, you know, it's just kind of, it was just this weird, like, opening experience. And he's like, it was an opening experience for you? And then she'll go ahead and explain more. Okay, so this is mirroring. And then after she does this a little bit, and you've mirrored like a number of things, just like a little bit of an arc, you then label that arc. And you say, well, it sounds like, or it feels like that this and this, and basically you just reiterate like the key words that she has said. Okay, so in order to do this well, you have to be a good listener. Okay, you have to be an active listener. So you just reiterate. So it sounds like, or it feels like, you were feeling this and this and this and this. You've just basically chosen words she's already used, and that makes her feel like you were truly listening, which you were, but you weren't listening to like engage yourself, right? You really didn't offer much of the conversation at all. You were listening and just repeating things back to her to get her to open more, which makes her feel more connected to you. Okay? It gives her the sensation that, like, oh my gosh, she's really listening to me. He really wants to hear more. Okay. But, you know, you're really not putting much of yourself into it because it's not necessary. Okay. You don't have to come in with your philosophical ideas. Oh, well, I think this is what, like, that's irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Okay. Unless she comes on, she says, well, what are your thoughts? Like, what do you think about this stuff? And you could give her just a little bit, just a little taste of like your thoughts on the matter, and say, but what's really important is how you feel during this, because I think it's important. I think it's significant. Right? And so you just kind of like offer it as something to try out for a while, and then have her reflect on how it feels. Okay. All right, number 8 here is offer her identity within the submission. Okay, so again, this is like pushing a little bit deeper into it. So, a woman who's not naturally submissive must eventually see her submission not as loss, but as revelation. And again, this is it's a process. It's not easy. It's a gradual thing. Okay, so it helps for these things to give her a title, a role, a place in your kingdom, not just a girl who obeys, but more so as a vessel of your vision. That she plays like a vital role in this. And that's the problem, is that you can't be this guy who's like, hey, I'm just out here fucking bitches, and expect all of this stuff that I described. Okay, you're not going to get it. And if you try it, it's going to be paper thin. It's not going to have any weight or gravity or depth. You're just trying it on so that you could say to your friends or say to yourself, to your ego, that I'm doing this thing and it's like really cool and it's dominant. And, I learned this from Justin, right? But it's just some bitch that you're fucking. Okay. This is more so for women that you've approved of, that you're willing to bring to your inner circle. Okay. Like, what was that movie, that Meet the Fockers? Like the circle of trust. Okay. And the circle is very small, but she's earned her way into there. And that's when she's given a title, a role, a place within your kingdom. So she's not just this girl who does stuff for you, but she's a vessel of your vision, and that her presence and how she shows up is significant. And that's part of the bigger shift. Okay. Is in her realizing that how she shows up, how she thinks, how she feels, how she speaks, how she behaves, her habits, all of these things are significant. They matter. They mean something, because you've brought her in and are attempting to sort of like integrate her into the system. So anything that gets integrated into the system itself is meaningful, right? Because it's yours, it should be meaningful. Therefore, anything that links into it and like kind of grows its roots into it and becomes part of that, assimilates into it, it then must also be significant. It must understand itself as significant in order to join and become like the same color, right? So also help her create rituals of self-devotion, where she prepares herself for you, not as a task, but as worship. Okay. Again, like, this is more advanced stuff, but these things are really important. Okay. Rituals of self-devotion. So this goes into self-care, right? This is skin, this is hair, this is body, this is nails, this is her food. It's basically her understanding that how she takes care of herself is not just this like task-driven stuff that she needs to do to like keep you around or like keep you happy or whatever. That it's a form of devotion. And this is something you can build through praise, through explanation, through helping her understand these sort of things. That it's like the whole process, right? The whole process here is to move away from that she's not just some girl who's fulfilling a role, right? And that like, whatever, you might just kind of like lose interest one day and just kick her to the curb. You know what I mean? It's helping her understand and creating and cultivating a position of significance. But the significance is actually when she becomes more in alignment with your will. Okay, again, the liquid taking the shape of the container, right? And then the last part here is speaking of her journey as sacred. So let her feel the pride of being owned, okay, of taking shape of that container. And this can come about through self-reflection, all right? And this is why I harp on, having your girl utilize a journal or a diary. Typically, one, I mean, it can be private, like a handwritten private one that she kind of keeps to herself, or a private Google Doc. But I encourage my girls to have a shared Google Doc, and not for like invasion of privacy or whatever, but just so that I can see where her mind is, and to see where she's at and what she's reflecting on, and the development of this and so on. Nothing more, nothing, just so I could just see, okay, and watch her, all right, get a feel for certain things. And this is all really important, right? So that she understands that, again, it's not just obedience for obedience sake, that it's about basically like changing into something, right? It's about transformation. So that's all I have for you guys on this. I suggest going back through and taking some notes, right? Just jotting this stuff down. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right. You've been timed out, or I'll see. This person has come through before with something about socks. I don't know what. But, that's actually something, I'll use this as an example. So you have to watch out for, what's it called? Sub-frenzy. Okay. And it's not just with submissives. Okay. It could be just a regular girl who's like not into power dynamics or anything like that, but it's something to watch out for. And it's this high energy, this fervor to dive into being in a situation with you, to be connected with you, to get sexual with you or whatever. Okay. It's really important to control the pace. All right. And this is part of the reason why I tell guys to control their sexual impulses. Okay. Like, what was that thing I said to, made a post about it. It was something about like, don't fear me being fierce, or don't fear my force. I said, fear me being slow, or be afraid of my slowness. I can't remember what it was, but being slow and deliberate is much more impactful than being fast. Okay. So surely there's something great about a girl being excited, wanting to get into bed with you, wanting to do this, wanting to do that, and you saying, okay, let's go, let's do this. Okay. And it's like boom, 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 all the puzzle pieces fitting together, perfect, boom. It's like high intensity, but quick drop off. Okay. Now imagine that, but it's then extended, and she's like, oh, I want to do this. And you don't deny her to the point where it's like a cold stone wall and she gets turned off and rejected. Okay. You don't want to do that. You control the pace. Okay. So she wants to open the floodgates. You take that valve and you turn it down so it's just a little stream. And you're like, not yet. Just hold up. All right. And it goes along the lines of the edging example that I gave. Okay. Where you're edging her. She's come to a peak and then you stop. And you're like, oh, hold on a second. Hold on. And then you bring her back in. Edge, peak, and then break off again. All right. It's the same mentality, but instead of with orgasms, you're doing it with her mind. You're doing it with her non-sexual body. It produces the same effect. Okay. Which is an increase in tension and an increase of desire to release. And so by just going for it, like let's say you don't edge her at all, you bring her high up with a vibrator and boom, she has this orgasm and then goes back down and there's the release and all that stuff. Great. Like that's totally fine on its own, right? Grab the girl, she's really into you, you're into her, you go find a hotel, you bring her to your place, whatever, you fuck, and then it's done. Like, great, that's fine. But imagine how great that orgasm is after she's been edged 6-7 times in a row. And you're making her ask and then beg and plead and beg, and then you give it to her. Okay? That's way more powerful. Okay. And in the same sense, that the time, the non-sexual time where there's that interest and there's wanting to do this, wanting to do that, she wants to get to know you, she wants to spend time with you or whatever, she's really forward with what she wants to do, and you take that valve and you turn it down to a gentle stream. The water's no longer blasting out of the faucet. Okay. It's not off. Okay. But it's not at a full blast either. And basically you're saying here, like, all right, I like you, but you're still here, but we're going at a slow pace. And we're going to go when I say we go. We're going to move when I say we move. Basically, you're going to feel good when I say we're going to feel good. You're going to come when I say you're going to come. And you're going to fucking love it. This is not something you say, but this is what you know. This is something you know. It kind of goes back to that first thing that I was reading about being sovereign, right? Because you cannot have doubt. You cannot, you can't be dominant. You cannot be a leader if you have self-doubt. If you second guess your choices, if you second guess your opinions, if you second guess the things that you want, all right? This is why a number of my guys, like when they first start working with me, I tell them, make a list from 1 to 101 and knock out desires of yours. And so many guys, they get hung up after maybe 20, 25, 35, something like that. Maybe they'll get halfway by just being able to just power through. But at some point, they're like, ugh, I'm fucking stumped. Right? Like, you have to be in tune with your desires. You cannot deny yourself of just simply wanting. Okay? And it's a very simple exercise, but it kind of like touches a little bit on the conditioning that we as men have around our desires, and how it's important to get in touch with them. We're conditioned to want just the bare necessities, that the basics are good enough. And a lot of guys are totally okay with that. They're like, hey, if I got a roof, I got clothes, I got a job, I got food, I got beer, I'm good. Maybe occasional blowjob, I'm fine. And, you know, a lot of guys are that way. Like, fuck, I purposely went homeless for a number of months. I said, fuck all this shit. I gave away a bunch of stuff, closed my bank accounts, had nothing but cash, no cell phone, and I lived out of one of those like big like canvas military duffel bags. And that's what I did for a number of weeks, maybe like 3 months. I don't really remember. It was a number of years ago. But we can do that. We can, like another friend of mine, he said, fuck it. And he just decided to live out of a van. He just didn't care. We can be very comfortable with so little. All right. But that doesn't inspire creativity. It doesn't inspire extending out and saying, I'm allowed to want. Okay. Because within dynamic, because we learn about interpersonal dynamics at an early age in subtle ways, from culture, from religion, from family, all sorts of different sources of like what's acceptable and what's unacceptable. And what I'm doing here is to challenge you guys on your conditioning of what's acceptable and what's not. Really? You're going to a woman and encouraging her to ask permission to brush her teeth? Yeah. And it's not so you can have control over her teeth brushing. That's not the point. It's a greater thing. It's the structure by which that's happening, so that you get comfortable with saying, hey, I'd like you to ask permission for this very simple thing that you've been doing your whole life. That's not a big deal. It's not a big thing, right? It's not like having permission to eat or to sleep or use the toilet, right? Something simple, brushing your teeth, okay? Or it could be any number of, fun, simple little things that we take for granted, okay?
and it's not about the teeth. It's just about her getting used to saying, and she might like kind of laugh about it at first, which is totally fine, right? She might giggle, she might laugh, like think it's silly, she might think it's stupid. Okay, it doesn't matter what she thinks, not at this point. Okay, it's not about how she feels about it, not at this point. Okay, it's just getting used to using those muscles in a different way. And she might think it's silly. She's like, it's time for bed. Can I please go brush my teeth? And she might kind of like roll her eyes and just feel dumb about it. And then you come in, you give her a hug, give her a kiss on the cheek, and say, that was great. I know it feels silly, but like, yes, just like that. It's so cute. And then and you don't say that's sex, you say that was so cute. And then give her a little pat on the butt, say, yes, of course you can go brush your teeth. Right? And when you come back, I'll have extra kisses and hugs for you. Right? Again, positive reinforcement. Okay? Constant positive reinforcement for the things that you want to see. All right? Really important. So I think this shit was rich, right? This was a thick show. So if you have to go back, take some like shorthand notes, just mark down the basic stuff, because I know I can ramble like in between points. So go back and just hit the main points, mark them down. Or if you want to discuss it further, just copy and paste that link, thecalendly.com/the Dominance Academy, and and set up a call, and we can talk about these things in more detail. If you need help understanding, or running by some examples and ideas of your own, that's what we can do as well. So I'm going to pull this one to a close. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. I appreciated your time here with me, and I appreciate all of you who are catching this on the replay. Thank you very much. And please go to the website, thedominanceacademy.com. Check out what I've got going on there. Sign up for your free consultation, and we'll see you on the next one. Take it easy, guys.